So the first question would be, what was the most transformative moment or experience in your life, and how did it shape you as a person?
There are many transformative experiences in my life. A couple of ones that come to mind. The first one is that I was in high school, I believe grade 10, and my parents, my father especially, used really to care about education, and we used to have a private teacher regardless. We go to school, but when we come, we tell them we're being challenged. They were not like educated to the extent that they would come and teach us high school stuff. Like my dad was so busy, he passed away. But he was so busy and doesn't have time to sit with us to educate us. Neither my mom was. So what they did is that they used to have a teacher. So after school in the evening, the teacher comes. Sometimes, like even I don't pay attention in class because I know there is a teacher coming and it's going to go over the lesson. However, I was studying really hard, and I remember at the end of the year, I came back from school. That was the day we got the reports. And he was at home. And then when I entered, and then he asked me, "What was your rank in your class?" And I was excited to tell him I was second in class. And I thought he would be joyful and happy, but rather he was mad at me. Second? Who's first? And why? Does he eat better food than you? Why not you? And I felt sad, and I made it mean like no matter what I do would please them. So kind of like the mindset, like the not good enough part kind of setting that I'm not good enough. And many times that during my life, I feel like no matter what I do, I'm not working hard. That always this little voice comes up that I'm not working hard enough. When I did courses, like in 1997, I got involved in self-improvement courses, and I realized that how the meanings we make in our life kind of like show up in our conduct in our daily life. And by me just catching this little voice that not good enough, by catching it and canceling it and replacing it with I'm good enough, that made a lot of difference in everything I do. Made me feel more satisfied with everything I do. So this is one. The second one, I got married at an early age. I was 22 years old. My wife was 19. And then when my mother said to us, okay, now you got married, I think it makes sense that you be independent, like whatever my dad after passed away, whatever inheritance was there, we were sharing all of us together as a family. But once I got married, my mom said, it's about time for you to be independent. And this way you can decide what you want to do with your life. And at that moment, I just didn't feel safe. I just felt like all of a sudden I'm alone. My brother not with me, my sister not with me, just like I'm alone. They were younger than me, mind you. Right. So for me, and it's just kind of like a value, because everything kind of starts, and then it becomes like something that you really value. Security came up. Like I want security. And thinking about security, I started to think about how am I going to navigate my way to be secured. Now I have a wife. Soon I will have a child. I need security for them. So that's kind of like get me thinking. And it's kind of like a fear base that caused me to think and decide what to do. So the businesses that I embarked on, and that was back in 1985, is I started to import spare parts for trucks. And I didn't know people. Like I was a salesman, basically. I get the parts and I take samples and I go visit small shops and market the parts and sell. Year after year, the business grew. So I became like a wholesaler. So like I bring bulk, and like maybe a couple of people, they come and just buy everything, and they do the distribution. Then after that, that's when in 1989, we had a flood in the Sudan. I was actually in Khartoum, Sudan. That's the city where I was born. And I grew up. There was a flood, and that flood really there was no electricity, mud coming through the bathroom taps, and I just thought to myself, no, this is not the life I want for my family. I need to immigrate. And that's when I filled in even a photocopy of an application to immigrate to Canada. And within a period of like 3 months it was a photocopy of an application, and I got a response within 3 months that the consulate is coming to one of the hotels in Khartoum and he would like to meet you. And I took my wife and I went. At that time, my daughter was only like 2 years old. And the guy was so welcoming. And he asked me a question. What would you like to do in Canada? I told him, listen, I am a salesman and that's what I'm going to do. And he goes, we need salespeople. Here is your medical. I did my medical, me, my wife, my daughter, and I came as a visitor with my landed immigration paper 1989 in October. We stayed for 1 month here. We really loved the city. And then we went back and then cleared some of my business. I left whatever to my brother to take care of. Then I came and resided here in April 1990. And since then, I have been in Canada. Happy Canadian family man and grandfather.
And you mentioned earlier the fear that kind of pushed you to.
Yeah.
Do you still fear
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, not to be honest, not anymore, but it's a good question. When I came to Canada, I migrated. I was 27 years old. And many of my relatives came over, they visited, and they were saying, what happened to you? Are you normal? You're going to leave the business and go start a new life there? And I told them, listen, I have nothing to lose. This is where I was born, okay? I can always come back and start a new business, okay? But if I don't do this now when I'm young, I will never do it. So if you ask me to do this now, I can do it. But I have attachment to my kids, to my mom, so I can't just go somewhere else. Of course, I like to go live in a warm place now, but it's not easy.
Everything that you love is here.
Yeah.
You've already-
Yeah, my family, my wife, my kids, my grandkids.
How did you find being a salesperson when you first came here? Did you go straight into real estate or did you try other things? How was your journey?
When I came here, I wanted to get into real estate right away. But then at that time, the rules is you have to reside at least 1 year to become a real estate agent. You have to reside, I guess, to learn that Canadian experience, know the country before you apply. So what did I do? And when I came, it was the worst recession in Canada. That was in 1990 and it lasted for like about 5 years or so. It was the worst. Businesses are closing down. It was like crazy. And I gave myself 6 months. If I don't generate income, I won't be going back to the Sudan. Actually, I decided to go to Egypt if I don't make it in 6 months. So I started by, when I go to church, I speak to people and say, you know what, if you know somebody needs somebody, a job, any kind of job. I became like not attached. I said, whatever is out there, I am willing. Even my first job was actually a shelver in a convenience store. Okay, but while I am a shelver, I was also applying. One of our good friends used to work at CIBC, and she said, why don't you just give me your resume? And I gave her my resume, and she was kind of like the person as a reference I put her. And then all of a sudden, I got an interview with CIBC, and they agreed to take me as a teller. So then I left the convenience store after working for 1 month, and then I worked as a teller at the bank for 1 year part-time. Then there is a job for head tellers became available at another branch. I applied for it. They took me. So I was head teller until 1995. But while I was a teller, I did my real estate courses. And then in 1992, I got my license. And then I didn't leave the bank right away. I was doing it part-time for 3 years, basically friends and relatives. And then in the bank, I was also advancing. I did the mutual funds courses. I got the license for it. So at that point, then the ultimatum, basically, point where I need to make a decision whether to remain at the bank or switch to real estate. So at the bank, if I want to advance, then it would be conflict of interest to trade in real estate. You cannot give somebody a mortgage while you are selling real estate. So anyways, I had to make a decision. And what helped me to make the decision to leave the bank is actually Tony Robbins. The bank has a library of books and cassettes. I saw him, I think, once on TV. And then I checked the bank library, and he had his cassettes. I think it was called The Power Within. I brought these tapes and I started listening to them. By the end, after I finished the cassettes, I said, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. I want to be a real estate agent full-time. And I wrote my letter, resignation. I went to the bank manager and I gave her my resignation letter. I said, you know what? I want to do what's best here. And what's best for me now is to focus on real estate, and I resigned. 1995. Never looked back.